publicly thank him for saving your pitch." The CFO grinned on the all hands. I did, then forwarded one commit log. The founder stared at the diff, stopped breathing. "Who let a non? Engineer on. And deploy to prod?" The room went silent. 3 years of my life building this startup flashed before my eyes. I thought I was alone, outnumbered by the corporate saboteurs who'd infiltrated our once idealistic team. But sometimes, justice comes in the form of 4 simple lines of code that can't be explained away. I remember the day I joined NextEra like it was yesterday. The office was basically a glorified garage with 10 of us crammed around folding tables, everyone fueled by instant coffee and Logan's infectious vision. Saving lives through early detection of cancer. As a software engineer, I'd worked at bigger companies with better salaries, but none had given me the purpose I found at NextEra. Your algorithm is genius," Logan had said after I spent 3 straight days coding the first prototype that could identify cancer biomarkers from routine blood tests. His enthusiasm was genuine, his eyes lighting up with the possibilities. This could change everything. That was 3 years ago. Now, NextEra occupied 3 floors of a sleek downtown building, employed over 150 people, and our technology was being hailed as revolutionary in medical journals. My core algorithm had evolved but still formed the backbone of everything we did. I'd climbed from being just another engineer to leading the hospital integration team, the most critical division as we approached our Series C funding round. The company had changed in other ways too. The original team of passionate innovators was now outnumbered by corporate types in pressed shirts, who talked about market penetration and exit strategies instead of patients saved. Most days, I tried to ignore the shift, focusing on the technical challenges that still made my job thrilling. "Morning, Dot," Amanda called as I walked past her desk. She'd joined 6 months after me and had become my right hand on the integration team. Unlike me, with my perpetually messy brown hair and tendency to wear the same jeans 3 days in a row, Amanda always looked polished. But beneath her corporate-ready appearance was a coding beast who could debug faster than anyone I'd ever met. "Ready for the pre-pitch meeting?" she asked, falling into step beside me. "As ready as 4 hours of sleep allows," I replied, taking a gulp of my coffee. I was up tweaking the Memorial Health demo until 2 in the morning. Memorial Health System was the whale we'd been chasing for months. With 38 hospitals across 3 states, securing them as a client would not only validate our technology but practically guarantee the success of our upcoming funding round. "The demo looks incredible," Amanda assured me. "They're going to love it." We pushed through the glass doors into the main conference room where Logan was already waiting, along with several members of my team. Logan gave me a warm smile. Even as CEO of a growing company, he still wore hoodies and spoke with the same passion that had drawn me to NextEra in the first place. His brown hair was perpetually tousled, and the dark circles under his eyes matched my own. "There's my technical genius," he said, making room for me at the table. Before I could respond, the door swung open again, and James Harper strode in. Our CFO had joined 6 months ago at the insistence of our investors. With his tailored suits and Harvard MBA, he represented everything that the original NextEra hadn't been. He wasn't exactly rude, but his cold efficiency made it clear he saw us early employees as quirky necessities rather than the heart of the company. "Good morning, everyone," James said crisply, not waiting for responses. "Let's make this quick. The memorial pitch is in 3 days, and we need to ensure everything is flawless." I opened my laptop and pulled up the presentation. I finalized the demo that shows how our algorithm would have caught 62% of late-stage diagnoses years earlier in their historical data. The integration timeline is ambitious but achievable, and I've included specific metrics on reduced costs and improved outcomes. James nodded, but I could tell he was only half listening. Sounds standard. "Now, I've taken the liberty of adding someone to strengthen your team for this presentation. My fingers froze on the keyboard. Adding someone? The presentation is in 3 days. Yes, and we can use all the help we can get. James gestured toward the door as it opened again. Everyone, this is Troy Davis. He comes to us from Meridian Health Solutions with extensive experience in hospital sales. A man in his mid-30s walked in with the confident smile of someone who'd never doubted himself a day in his life. His handshake was firm as he made his way around the table, his perfectly whitened teeth flashing. When he reached me, he held my hand a beat too long. "So you're the famous Dot," Troy said. "James has told me all about your algorithm. Don't worry. I'm here to make sure the business side of things goes smoothly. You technical folks can focus on what you do best." I withdrew my hand, a knot forming in my stomach. The presentation already addresses both technical and business concerns. We've been preparing for weeks. "And I'm sure it's great," Troy replied smoothly. "I'll just review everything and suggest any tweaks." "No big deal. Troy will be joining your presentation team," James said, his tone making it clear this wasn't up for discussion. "He has relationships at Memorial that could prove valuable." I looked at Logan, expecting him to back me up, but he just gave me an apologetic shrug. "It can't hurt to have another perspective, Dot. Especially someone who knows the hospital procurement process." The rest of the meeting passed in a blur as Troy offered opinions on everything from our slide design to our pricing structure. With each comment, the knot in my stomach tightened. It wasn't that his ideas were bad, exactly. They were just different. Less focused on the technology's accuracy and more on its marketability. Less about saving lives and more about saving money. As we filed out of the meeting, Amanda whispered, "What just happened?" I shook my head. "I don't know. But I've got a bad feeling about this." I couldn't have known then just how right I was. That meeting was the first tremor of an earthquake that would threaten everything we'd built. And Troy Davis, with his perfect smile and smooth words, was standing directly on the fault line. The next 2 days became a blur of tension and barely concealed frustration. Every time I finalized a section of the presentation, Troy would suggest minor adjustments that somehow shifted the focus away from our core technology. In team meetings, he would wait until I finished explaining something, then rephrase it as if translating my technical jargon for children. Despite everyone present being engineers, "What Dot means," he would say with a smile that never reached his eyes, "is that our solution saves hospitals money. That's the bottom line executives care about." By the night before the pitch, my team's morale had plummeted. Even Amanda, usually unflappable, seemed deflated after Troy interrupted her detailed explanation of our integration timeline to insert his own oversimplified version. "He's undermining everything we've built," I muttered as we worked late, finalizing the demo. The office was nearly empty, just a few dedicated engineers scattered across the floor. "At least the demo will speak for itself," Amanda replied, attempting optimism. "Once they see the actual technology in action, Troy's sales speak won't matter." I nodded, taking comfort in that truth. Our demo used anonymized historical patient data to show how our algorithm would have flagged concerning blood test results years before patients were eventually diagnosed with cancer. It was powerful, irrefutable evidence of our value. "I'm going to grab more coffee," I said, standing up and stretching. "Want some?" Amanda nodded, and I headed to the kitchen. When I returned 10 minutes later, she was staring at her screen in confusion. "Dot, something's wrong. The demo files aren't loading properly." I set down the coffee cups and leaned over her shoulder. "What do you mean?" "I was doing one final test run, and the visualization component crashed. Now I can't even find the main dataset in the repository." A spike of panic shot through me. I pulled up the repository on my own computer and frantically searched through the folders. The core files were there, but the process dataset that powered our visualization was missing, along with several key configuration files. This doesn't make sense, I said, my voice rising. I committed everything yesterday. It was all working perfectly. We spent the next 4 hours in increasingly desperate attempts to recover the missing files. By 2 in the morning, we'd managed to cobble together a working demo, but it lacked the polish and impact of the original. It would have to do. Get some sleep, I told Amanda as we finally packed up. Tomorrow's going to be rough. I arrived at the office at 7 the next morning, hoping for time to do one final check of the hastily reconstructed demo. To my surprise, Troy was already there, looking freshly pressed in a tailored navy suit. "Morning, Dot," he said cheerfully. "Big day today." I took the liberty of getting coffee for the executives. He gestured to a carrier with 4 cups from an expensive coffee shop down the street. "What about the team?" I asked, noticing there were exactly enough cups for the memorial executives but none for our presenters. Troy shrugged. "Figured you tech folks would have your own coffee preferences." The memorial health team arrived precisely at 9. James and Logan greeted them warmly, while Troy smoothly inserted himself into the conversation, mentioning golf courses and mutual acquaintances as if they were old friends. I stood awkwardly to the side with Amanda and 2 other engineers from my team, feeling like outsiders at our own presentation. Once everyone was seated in the conference room, Logan gave a brief introduction about NextEra's mission before turning it over to me. Despite my exhaustion and unease, I found my rhythm as I explained our technology. The hospital executives leaned forward, clearly engaged as I outlined how our algorithm worked and the dramatic improvements in early detection rates. "And now," I said, reaching the crucial moment, "I'd like to show you how our system would have performed with your own historical data." I clicked to launch the demo, and for a moment, everything seemed fine. The initial loading screen appeared, showing the NextEra logo. Then, without warning, the application froze. I clicked again, feeling sweat break out on my forehead. Nothing happened. I tried opening the backup file, but the same error occurred. "I apologize for the technical difficulty," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Let me just, if I may," Troy interrupted smoothly, standing up. "While Dot troubleshoots, perhaps I could walk you through some alternative slides that might be helpful." Before I could object, Troy had connected his laptop to the projector and was presenting slides I'd never seen before. Rather than focusing on our core algorithm and its accuracy, his presentation emphasized a completely different integration approach, one that would require far less adjustment from hospital systems, but would significantly reduce the effectiveness of our cancer detection. "As you can see," Troy continued confidently, "this approach would require minimal disruption to your existing workflows, while still providing incremental value." I watched in horror as months of careful work were being undone. Troy was essentially promising them a watered-down version of our technology that would be faster and cheaper to implement, but nowhere near as effective at saving lives. Worst of all, the memorial executives were nodding along, clearly relieved at the prospect of an easier integration. When the presentation ended, the memorial CEO shook Troy's hand warmly. "Very impressive. I appreciate your understanding of hospital realities. Most tech companies promise the moon but don't understand the complexities of implementation." "That's exactly why I joined NextEra," Troy replied. "To bridge that gap between revolutionary technology and practical application." I stood there, speechless, as the meeting wrapped up. As the memorial team left, James clapped Troy on the shoulder. "Excellent recovery. That's exactly why we needed you on this team." "The demo should have worked," I said quietly. "We tested it repeatedly yesterday." James gave me a dismissive look. "Technology fails. That's why having a strong business approach matters more than technical details." He turned to Logan. "Don't you agree?" Logan looked uncomfortable. "Both matter. But yes, Troy did an excellent job recovering from the technical glitch." Back at my desk, I couldn't shake the feeling that something very wrong had happened. The missing files, the crashed demo, Troy's perfectly prepared alternative presentation. It all felt too convenient. It doesn't make sense, Amanda whispered as we reviewed the code, trying to understand what went wrong. These errors shouldn't have happened. It's like someone deliberately broke the demo. Before I could respond, we were interrupted by a company-wide email from James calling for an immediate all-hands meeting. With a sense of dread, I followed the stream of employees heading toward the largest conference room. James stood at the front, beaming, with Troy at his side. Logan hovered nearby, looking pleased but somewhat confused. "I have excellent news," James announced once everyone was gathered. "Memorial Health has just informed us they want to move forward with discussions immediately, thanks largely to the exceptional presentation today." He gestured to Troy. "In particular, I want to recognize Troy's exceptional save when the technical demonstration encountered problems. His quick thinking and strategic approach turned what could have been a disaster into a triumph." My cheeks burned with humiliation as dozens of eyes turned toward me. The implied failure in the room. "Sometimes," James continued, his smile not reaching his eyes as he looked directly at me, "we need to remember that technology is just a tool. It's the business application that matters." Perhaps some of our more technical team members could learn from Troy's approach. In that moment, as James publicly undermined not just me but the very foundation of what NextEra was built on, I knew something fundamental had shifted. This wasn't just about a failed demo or a new hire overstepping. Something darker was happening at the company I'd helped build. And somehow, I needed to figure out what it was. The week after the Memorial Health pitch became a slow-motion nightmare. 2 members of my integration team requested transfers to other departments, citing communication issues and unclear leadership. Everyone knew what that meant. They didn't want to be caught in the crossfire between me and Troy, who was increasingly acting as if he led the team. Amanda remained steadfastly loyal. "This is garbage," she fumed after sitting through a meeting where Troy presented his vision for the integration, which bore little resemblance to the carefully architected plan we'd been developing for months. "He doesn't even understand how the algorithm works." "I know," I replied, keeping my voice low. We were huddled in a corner of the office kitchen, away from curious ears. "But everyone seems to be buying what he's selling." "Not everyone," Amanda insisted. "The engineers know something's off. Did you notice how Pete kept asking technical questions that Troy couldn't answer? He just kept deflecting and talking about big-picture strategy." I nodded, grateful for the small acts of solidarity. But they did little to counter the broader narrative taking shape. Troy was a business visionary, saving the company from impractical engineers like me. That evening, after most employees had gone home, I started digging into what had happened with our demo. The failure still didn't make sense. We had tested it thoroughly. Pulling up the repository logs, I began methodically tracking changes made in the days before the presentation. What I found sent a chill down my spine. At 11:37 the night before the pitch, someone had made a series of small but critical changes to the configuration files, changes that would cause the demo to fail when processing larger datasets, like the Memorial Health records. The user had logged in using a generic admin account that several people had access to, making it impossible to immediately identify who had made the changes. I expanded my search, looking at system access logs around other recent issues we'd experienced. A pattern emerged: subtle code changes and mysterious system access coinciding with key milestones for my team. Each individual instance could be dismissed as a glitch or oversight, but together they painted a disturbing picture of deliberate sabotage. The next morning, James announced that Troy would now be co-leading the hospital integration team alongside me. The pretense of Troy being brought in just for the memorial pitch was gone. Now he had official authority to override my decisions and redirect my team's work. That afternoon, I was heading to a meeting when I heard voices coming from the small conference room near James's office. The door was slightly ajar, and Troy's distinctive voice carried clearly. "We need to accelerate the timeline," he was saying. "The sooner we can implement the restructuring, the better." "I agree," James replied. "The board is receptive, especially after the memorial success. But we need to be careful. Some of the original team members are still too attached to Logan's original vision. They'll adapt, or they'll leave," Troy said dismissively. "Either way, by the time the acquisition happens, we'll have shaped this company into something much more valuable than Logan's cancer-detecting passion project." Acquisition? My heart raced as I carefully backed away from the door. NextEra wasn't supposed to be preparing for an acquisition. We were working toward our Series C funding to expand our mission. What were James and Troy really planning? That evening, I finally managed to get Logan alone. We'd been friends before he was my boss, and I hoped our history would count for something. We sat in his office, the city lights twinkling beyond the windows as the sun set. "Logan, I'm worried about what's happening," I began. "The memorial demo didn't fail by accident. Someone deliberately sabotaged it." Logan frowned. "That's a serious accusation, Dot. Do you have proof?" I explained what I'd found in the logs and the pattern of suspicious activities. Logan listened, but I could see doubt in his eyes. "And I overheard James and Troy talking about accelerating some timeline and restructuring, and they mentioned an acquisition. Are we being sold?" Logan sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Nothing's decided. But yes, there have been some interested parties. James thinks we should consider acquisition offers alongside the funding round options. But that's not what NextEra is supposed to be. We're building something to save lives, not to flip for a quick profit. Business is complicated, Dot. The investors who made NextEra possible expect returns. James is just doing his job, looking at all options. And Troy? What's his job exactly? Because it seems like his main purpose is undermining my team and changing our core technology." Logan looked uncomfortable. "Try to collaborate better with him. He has experience we need." The conversation left me feeling more alone than ever. Logan, once my strongest ally, had become distracted and distant, seemingly willing to follow James's lead regardless of the direction it took the company. The next day, Memorial Health sent their initial feedback on our proposal. They wanted significant changes to the integration plan, changes that aligned precisely with Troy's vision, not our original algorithm. The modifications would make the software less accurate at detecting early-stage cancers, but more immediately profitable by reducing implementation costs and focusing on patients with premium insurance plans. "This is exactly what Troy pitched them," I told Amanda as we reviewed the document. "They're asking us to gut the core functionality that makes our technology special." "What are we going to do?" Amanda asked. That was the question I'd been asking myself all week. The company culture had shifted dramatically. More original team members were leaving or being sidelined. I considered quitting too. I could easily find another job with my skills and experience, but the thought of walking away from the algorithm I'd built, seeing it twisted into something that prioritized profit over patient outcomes, was unbearable. "We fight," I said finally. "But first, we need to understand exactly what we're up against." That weekend, I dove into research about Troy Davis and Meridian Health Solutions, the company he supposedly came from. What I found was disturbing. Meridian had been sued 2 years ago for medical fraud, specifically for selling diagnostic software that claimed accuracy rates far higher than it actually delivered. The case had been settled quietly, with no admission of wrongdoing. But shortly afterward, the company had been acquired by a larger healthcare conglomerate for a surprisingly high price. And Troy Davis had been their VP of Business Development. The pieces were starting to fit together. If Troy had helped orchestrate a fraudulent buildup and lucrative sale at Meridian, was he now attempting the same strategy at NextEra? And was James a willing accomplice? As I stared at my computer screen, The weight of what I was discovering pressed down on me. I wasn't just fighting for my job or even for control of my algorithm. I was fighting for the integrity of a company built on the promise of saving lives. And somehow, I needed to find a way to prove what was happening before it was too late. For the next 2 weeks, I lived a double life. During the day, I played the part of the cooperative team leader, attending meetings with Troy, where he progressively dismantled our technology's core strengths in favor of superficially attractive business optimizations. At night, I worked with Amanda to uncover the truth about what was happening at NextEra. The strain was taking its toll. I barely slept, subsisting on coffee and whatever food Amanda remembered to bring me. Dark circles formed permanent residences beneath my eyes, and my already slim frame became noticeably thinner as meals became an afterthought to investigation. "You need to take care of yourself," Amanda said one evening, forcing a sandwich into my hands. "You can't expose anyone if you collapse from exhaustion." I took a reluctant bite. "I know. It's just, there's something big happening, and we're running out of time." Our after-hours investigation had yielded disturbing patterns. By meticulously examining system logs and access records, we'd discovered that someone was consistently accessing my projects from the same IP address during odd hours. The access wasn't technically unauthorized. It came from within the NextEra network. But it had an unmistakable pattern of preceding problems with my team's work. Meanwhile, the daytime corporate theater grew increasingly surreal. Troy had begun taking credit for my previous work in executive meetings, referring to the algorithm we developed when discussing technology that predated his arrival by years. James would nod along, occasionally glancing at me as if daring me to contradict them. Logan was rarely present anymore, constantly pulled into meetings with investors and potential partners. When I did see him, he looked stressed and distracted, barely acknowledging my attempts to raise concerns. One Wednesday afternoon, James called me into his office. The glass-walled room had views of the entire city, a testament to how far we'd come from our garage days. James sat behind his immaculate desk, Troy lounging casually in a chair to the side. "I wanted to discuss the upcoming team reorganization," James began without preamble. "As you know, the Series C funding is nearly finalized, and we're planning for the next phase of growth." I nodded cautiously. "I've been preparing my team's roadmap for post-funding expansion." James and Troy exchanged a glance that sent warning bells ringing in my head. "That's actually what we wanted to discuss," James continued smoothly. "We're considering a more significant restructuring than previously indicated. Troy has proposed a new departmental organization that would separate algorithm development from implementation. Translation: they wanted to remove me from controlling how my own technology was used. "That seems inefficient," I replied, struggling to keep my voice neutral. "The technical integration is intrinsically linked to how the algorithm functions. Separating them would create unnecessary complexity." Troy leaned forward. "Actually, it streamlines things considerably. Your algorithm work is essentially complete now. We need business-focused implementation specialists to drive adoption." The implication was clear. My role was becoming obsolete in their new vision of NextEra. "We're still working through the details," James added. "Nothing is finalized until after the funding closes. For now, continue with your current responsibilities." As I left the meeting, a cold determination settled over me. Whatever they were planning, it was accelerating. I needed to find conclusive evidence before the funding closed, and the reorganization pushed me out completely. That night, Amanda and I made a breakthrough. While examining server logs, she discovered strange API calls that periodically sent data packets to an external server. "These shouldn't be here," she said, frowning at her screen. "This isn't part of our normal data flow." We traced the external server to a holding company with an obscure name. Further research revealed it was a subsidiary of MedTech Innovations. one of NextEra's main competitors, and a company rumored to be interested in acquisition opportunities in our space. They're sending our data to a competitor, I whispered, the implications sinking in. Amanda nodded grimly. And guess who authorized these API changes? They were implemented under Troy's user credentials 3 weeks ago. We dug deeper into Troy's background, bypassing the superficial resume details to examine his actual technical qualifications. Despite presenting himself as technically savvy, Troy had no engineering background whatsoever. His degree was in marketing, and his previous roles had all been in sales and business development. The picture was becoming clearer. Troy was a corporate infiltrator, working with James to devalue NextEra from within while feeding information to a competitor, likely setting up a lowball acquisition instead of the funding round we were supposedly pursuing. But suspicions weren't enough. We needed irrefutable evidence that even non-technical executives would understand. The breakthrough came at 2:30 in the morning, after everyone else had long since gone home. I was systematically examining commit logs when I found it. The smoking gun buried in lines of code. A commit made the night before the Memorial Health pitch showed someone deliberately modifying the critical configuration files to cause the demo failure. The changes were subtle enough to bypass casual review but guaranteed to crash the application when loaded with a dataset of Memorial's size. The commit had been made using James's login credentials, but the IP address matched Troy's computer. Holy shit, Amanda breathed, looking over my shoulder. This proves it was deliberate sabotage. I nodded, my exhaustion momentarily forgotten, as adrenaline coursed through me. And it gets worse. Look at the comments. The commit included an innocuous-looking comment about optimizing memory usage, but embedded within it was a timestamp that corresponded exactly with an email Troy had sent to James that same evening. They were coordinating, I said. Troy sabotaged the demo using James's credentials, probably with his explicit approval. We spent the rest of the night documenting everything, creating copies of the evidence on secure servers outside the NextEra network. By morning, we had compiled irrefutable proof that Troy and James were systematically undermining the company while feeding information to a competitor. With our evidence secured, I finally went to Logan's office, determined to make him understand the gravity of the situation. He looked up from his computer as I entered, his expression distracted. I don't have much time. I've got investors waiting. This can't wait, I said, closing the door behind me. I have evidence that James and Troy are deliberately sabotaging the company. I showed him some of what we'd found, the tampered commit logs, the unauthorized data transfers, Troy's misrepresented credentials. As the evidence accumulated, Logan's expression shifted from skepticism to concern. This is troubling, he admitted. But corporate espionage is a serious accusation. I need time to process this and speak with legal. We may not have time, I pressed. I think they're pushing for an acquisition rather than the funding round. Have you been approached by MedTech Innovations? Logan's surprised expression told me everything. How did you know about that? James only mentioned it to me yesterday. They're scheduled to tour our office tomorrow. My heart sank. Tomorrow? That's much sooner than I expected. It's just an exploratory meeting, Logan said, but he sounded less certain now. James thought we should hear them out as an alternative to the Series C. I was about to respond when my phone buzzed with a text from Amanda. Emergency. Server room now. I have to go, I told Logan. But please, look at the evidence. Don't meet with MedTech until you've reviewed everything. Amanda was pale when I found her in the server room. They're deleting logs, she said without preamble. I just caught Troy running a script to purge the commit history from the main server. Did we lose our evidence? No, we have our copies. But they're covering their tracks. I think they know we're onto them. The gravity of the situation hit me fully. Troy and James weren't just manipulating the company, they were actively destroying evidence of their actions. And tomorrow, the competitor they'd been feeding information to would be touring our office. likely prepared to make an acquisition offer that James would push Logan to accept. We were running out of time. That evening, Amanda and I huddled in my small apartment, surrounded by laptops and takeout containers as we finalized our plan. Logan had promised to review our evidence, but had been pulled into meetings for the rest of the day. I wasn't sure if he'd had time to understand the full scope of what was happening. "We need something irrefutable," I said, pacing the limited free space in my living room. "Something so clear that even non-technical people will instantly understand the betrayal." Amanda nodded, tapping away at her keyboard. "I'm building a visualization dashboard that maps all the unauthorized changes and data transfers. It shows the pattern too clearly to dismiss." I paused my pacing. "That's good, but we need more. We need to anticipate their counterarguments." We spent hours refining our approach, backing up evidence in multiple locations, and preparing a presentation that would expose the scheme in terms anyone could understand. Around midnight, I received a notification that Troy had begun removing my access privileges to critical systems. "They're definitely onto us," I told Amanda, showing her my phone. "They're trying to lock me out before I can gather more evidence." "Too late," she replied with grim satisfaction. "We already have everything we need." The next morning, James sent a company-wide email announcing a strategic presentation at 2 p.m, where he would share exciting potential directions for NextEra's future. Reading between the lines, it was clear he planned to position selling the company as the best option. I tried calling Logan repeatedly, but his assistant said he was in back-to-back meetings preparing for the medtech visit. With no direct access to him, I needed another ally. "Dr. Wilson," I murmured, an idea forming. Dr. Sarah Wilson had been Logan's mentor at Stanford, and one of NextEra's earliest advisors. Though not officially involved in day-to-day operations, she still sat on the scientific advisory board and had been instrumental in connecting us with our first hospital partners. I found her number in my old contacts and called. To my relief, she answered on the third ring. "Dorothy Matthews," she said warmly, using my full name as she always did. "It's been too long. Dr. Wilson, I need your help," I said, skipping pleasantries. "NextEra is in trouble." Over the next 20 minutes, I explained everything: the sabotage, the secret data transfers, Troy and James's scheme to devalue the company for acquisition. Dr. Wilson listened without interruption, asking occasional clarifying questions that reflected her sharp understanding of both the technology and the business implications. "This is deeply disturbing," she said when I finished. "Logan has always been brilliant but somewhat naive about corporate politics. I worried when he brought in that CFO without sufficient vetting. Can you help us? Logan won't respond to my calls, and MedTech is visiting today. I think James is pushing for a quick sale before anyone discovers what they've done." "I'll be there," she said firmly. "Send me your evidence in the meantime. And Dorothy? Be careful. People capable of this kind of deception can be dangerous when cornered." With Dr. Wilson's support secured, Amanda and I returned to the office to prepare for the confrontation ahead. We carefully backed up all our evidence on secure servers outside the NextEra network. If Troy or James tried to delete anything else, they would find themselves destroying only copies, not the originals. Throughout the morning, we watched as Troy and James prepared for the MedTech visit. Additional security was stationed in the lobby, and the main conference room was reorganized with new signage, emphasizing NextEra's business outcomes rather than our life-saving technology. At noon, James scheduled an unexpected pre-meeting alignment with the senior leadership. I wasn't initially included on the invitation, but Logan added me at the last minute, a small but encouraging sign. The meeting was tense, with James presenting slides that subtly positioned NextEra as struggling to achieve market adoption despite our technical innovation. The narrative he crafted suggested that an acquisition might be the best path forward for the technology to reach its potential. "As you'll see in today's presentation," James concluded, MedTech Innovations has the scale and distribution channels we currently lack. Their interest represents a validation of what we've built. What's the proposed valuation? One of the board members asked. James cleared his throat. Initial discussions suggest approximately 70 million. The room erupted in murmurs. Just 6 months ago, preliminary Series C discussions had valued NextEra at over 150 million. James was positioning a severe undervaluation as a win. Logan looked troubled but said nothing. I caught his eye, trying to silently communicate the urgency of the situation. He gave me an almost imperceptible nod. As the meeting broke up, I overheard Troy speaking to James in low tones. Everything's set. The technical demonstration will showcase the streamlined version perfectly. Their streamlined version was the gutted algorithm that sacrificed accuracy for ease of implementation. The version that would fail to detect many early-stage cancers, but would be cheaper to roll out. I returned to my desk to find a distressing surprise. My security badge no longer granted access to the server room or certain areas of the building. Checking my email, I discovered my system permissions had been significantly reduced overnight. I texted Amanda. They're locking me out of the building systems. Her reply came quickly. Same here. But we still have our backup evidence. At 1:30, just 30 minutes before the scheduled MedTech presentation, I received another shock. My company email account displayed an error message. Account temporarily suspended. Contact system administrator. They were making their move, systematically cutting off my access to NextEra's systems before the crucial meeting. If I couldn't access my evidence or even enter certain areas of the building, how could I expose their scheme? As panic began to rise, my phone buzzed with a text from Dr. Wilson. In a cab 10 minutes away. Be ready. Her message calmed my racing heart. We still had allies, and we still had our evidence. Troy and James might control the systems, but they didn't know what we had already secured beyond their reach. At 1:45, as employees began heading toward the main conference room for James's presentation, I received one final text from Amanda. East stairwell, 5 minutes. Bring your backup drive. The trap was set. Now we just had to spring it before Troy and James could sell NextEra's soul to the highest bidder. The next morning, I arrived at the office early, only to find my security badge denied at the main entrance. The security guard looked uncomfortable as he called upstairs. Sorry, Miss Matthews. I've been instructed that you're on administrative leave pending a security review, he said, not meeting my eyes. Since when? I demanded, though I already knew the answer. Orders came from Mr. Harper late last night, he replied, referring to James. I can't let you in without authorization. I stepped away from the building, pulse racing. They were moving even faster than I'd anticipated, cutting me off completely before the MedTech meeting. I called Amanda immediately. They've locked me out of the building, I told her when she answered. Supposedly, I'm on administrative leave. I figured something like this might happen, she replied, her voice low. I'm already inside. Meet me at the service entrance on the east side in 15 minutes. The delivery guys prop it open for their smoke breaks. True to her word, Amanda was waiting by a partially open service door when I arrived, nervously checking her watch. Hurry, she whispered, ushering me inside. The security cameras have a blind spot here, but we need to move quickly. We took the service stairs up to our floor, avoiding the main hallways where we might be spotted. Amanda led me to an empty conference room near the back of the office. I've set up a temporary workstation here, she explained, showing me a laptop connected to a portable drive. We can access the evidence through this. My credentials still work, but they've restricted my access to several systems. What about the MedTech visitors? I asked. When do they arrive? They're already here. James and Troy are giving them a tour of the office right now. The main presentation is scheduled for 11 in the large conference room. I checked my watch. 9:45. Just over an hour to finalize our plan. Has Dr. Wilson arrived yet? Amanda shook her head. No sign of her. I've been keeping an eye on the lobby security feed. We spent the next 30 minutes compiling our final evidence package. A clear chronological presentation of Troy and James's sabotage, backed by irrefutable technical logs. Amanda had created a brilliant visualization showing the pattern of unauthorized access and subsequent failures in our system, making the deliberate nature of the sabotage obvious, even to non-technical viewers. At 10:30, my phone buzzed with a text from Dr. Wilson. In lobby now. Security issues? I quickly explained the situation and she replied, Don't worry. They can't keep me out. Sure enough. 5 minutes later, Logan's assistant messaged Amanda. Dr. Wilson has arrived unexpectedly and asked to join the MedTech presentation. Mr. Reed seems surprised but pleased to see her. A small victory at least. Dr. Wilson was inside and would be present for whatever happened next. But we still needed to get our evidence into that meeting room. I have an idea, Amanda said suddenly. James scheduled an all-hands meeting immediately after the MedTech presentation. Everyone's expected to attend for some big announcement. Probably to announce the acquisition, I said bitterly. Exactly. But that means you'll be expected there too. They can't exactly announce you're on administrative leave to the whole company without raising questions. She was right. James and Troy had moved to lock me out quietly, but they couldn't exclude me from a company-wide meeting without drawing attention to their actions. At 10:50, we made our way carefully toward the large conference room. Through the glass walls, I could see the MedTech executives seated around the table with James, Troy, and Logan. Dr. Wilson sat next to Logan, her expression calm but watchful. We found positions in a small breakout area near the conference room, close enough to observe but partially hidden by a decorative plant wall. From there, we could see and hear what was happening inside, thanks to the room's poor soundproofing. James was in full sales mode, presenting slides that painted NextEra as a promising but struggling startup that needed MedTech's resources to reach its full potential. Despite our technical innovations, he was saying, we've faced significant challenges in hospital adoption due to integration complexity. That's why Troy has been leading efforts to streamline our solution. Troy took over smoothly, presenting himself as the technical visionary behind NextEra's recent pivot. He displayed charts showing improved implementation timelines at the expense of detection accuracy, though, naturally, he didn't phrase it that way. I gritted my teeth as I watched Logan frown slightly at some of Troy's claims but remain silent. The MedTech executives looked increasingly interested, exchanging approving glances. And now, Troy announced, I'd like to demonstrate our streamlined solution. He launched into a demonstration of the gutted version of my algorithm, the version that would miss early-stage cancers in exchange for easier hospital implementation. It physically hurt to watch my life's work being dismantled and misrepresented. When the demonstration concluded, the MedTech CEO leaned forward. Very impressive. We see significant synergies with our existing diagnostic suite. I think we're prepared to make an offer, pending some final technical validation. James beamed. Wonderful. As discussed, we believe a valuation in the 70 to 80 million range appropriately reflects NextEra's current position. One of the MedTech executives raised an eyebrow. That's significantly less than your last funding round valuation, correct? Any particular reason for the adjustment? James launched into a carefully crafted explanation about market realities and implementation challenges, essentially arguing that NextEra had been overvalued previously and was now available at a bargain price. Dr. Wilson spoke up for the first time. That's interesting, because my contacts at Memorial Health were quite impressed with the accuracy of the core algorithm. They seemed to suggest the technology was revolutionary, not struggling. James looked momentarily flustered but recovered quickly. Memorial appreciated the technology, but had concerns about implementation timelines, which is why Troy's work has been so valuable. The meeting continued with technical questions from the MedTech team, most of which Troy answered with impressive-sounding but technically nonsensical responses. To non-engineers, he appeared knowledgeable, but Amanda and I exchanged pained glances at each technical misrepresentation. At 12:15, James wrapped up the presentation. We're excited about the possibility of joining the MedTech family. Logan, would you like to add anything? Logan looked conflicted. I founded NextEra with a mission to save lives through early detection. I want to ensure that mission continues, regardless of our corporate structure. Absolutely, the MedTech CEO assured him smoothly. Your technology will reach even more patients as part of our suite. James glanced at his watch. We have an all-hands meeting scheduled now to update the team on our strategic discussions. Would you care to join us? The MedTech executives agreed, and everyone moved to the larger presentation space where the entire company was gathering. Amanda and I slipped into the room, positioning ourselves near the back as employees filled the seats. James took the stage, looking triumphant. Thank you all for joining us. Today marks a potential turning point for NextEra. We've had productive discussions with MedTech Innovations about a strategic acquisition that would bring our technology to a much wider market. Murmurs spread through the room as employees processed this unexpected news. Many looked confused or concerned, particularly the original team members who had joined for the mission rather than a quick exit. James continued, I want to especially recognize Troy Davis, whose vision for streamlining our solution has made this opportunity possible. Troy has truly saved the future of NextEra by making our technology accessible to the market. Troy stepped forward, basking in the undeserved recognition. James turned to me, his smile not reaching his eyes. And I'd like to ask Matthews to publicly thank Troy for saving the project she initially led. Would you come up here? It was a power play forcing me to publicly acknowledge Troy's contributions would cement the narrative they'd constructed and undermine any later objections I might raise. But James had just handed me exactly what I needed, a platform. I walked slowly to the front of the room, feeling hundreds of eyes on me. Troy watched with a smirk, clearly expecting me to either humiliate myself with false gratitude or make a scene and discredit myself. He had no idea what was coming. I approached the front of the room, acutely aware of every eye watching me. James's smile was smug as he stepped aside, clearly expecting me to embarrass myself. Troy stood nearby, exuding confidence in his perfectly tailored suit, secure in the belief that he had won. Taking the microphone, I surveyed the room, my colleagues, the MedTech executives, Logan looking uncertain, and Dr. Wilson watching intently from the side. This was the moment everything would change. I'd like to thank Troy, I began, my voice steady despite my racing heart. He's made everything incredibly clear. Troy nodded, his smirk widening. In fact, I continued, I'd like to show everyone exactly how clear he's made things. I pulled out my phone and sent a quick text to Amanda. At the back of the room, she tapped on her laptop, and the large presentation screen behind me changed. Instead of James's acquisition slides, a commit log appeared on the screen. The timestamp showed 11:37 p.m. the night before the Memorial Health pitch, and the user was logged as James Harper, but the IP address was highlighted. What I'm showing you is a commit to our code repository that deliberately sabotaged our Memorial Health demonstration, I explained, my voice growing stronger. It was executed using James's credentials, but from Troy's computer. Let me walk you through what this code does. James stepped forward. This is highly inappropriate. We're in the middle of selling a company under false pretenses? I interrupted. Yes, we are. Please let me finish. The room had gone completely silent. Even the MedTech executives were leaning forward, their expressions shifting from confusion to concern. This commit made subtle changes to our configuration files, changes that would only cause problems when processing a dataset the size of Memorial Health's records. It was designed to make our demo fail at the most critical moment. I advanced to the next slide, showing Troy's alternative presentation that had been prepared before the demo failure occurred. Interestingly, Troy had a complete alternative presentation ready to go, one that fundamentally altered our technology approach to make it less accurate but easier to implement, and less valuable to patients. Of course, Troy finally spoke up. This is ridiculous. You're just bitter that your overly complex approach wasn't practical for the market. Am I? I clicked forward again, revealing a sequence of unauthorized data transfers. These are API calls sending our proprietary data to an external server, a server owned by a holding company that's a subsidiary of MedTech Innovations. The MedTech CEO's expression darkened. What exactly are you suggesting? I'm not suggesting anything. I'm showing evidence that Troy Davis and James Harper have been systematically sabotaging NextEra from within, while feeding confidential information to a potential acquirer. They deliberately crashed our demos, undermined our technology, and misrepresented our capabilities, all to drive down our valuation for this exact moment. The room erupted in murmurs as I continued through the evidence, methodically exposing each aspect of their scheme. I showed Troy's misrepresented credentials, the pattern of failures that always benefited his alternative approach, and the communications between him and James that coincided with critical sabotage events. Logan had gone pale, his eyes fixed on the evidence accumulating on screen. James was frantically whispering to legal counsel, while Troy's confident demeanor had completely collapsed. I saved the most damning evidence for last, an email exchange between Troy and a MedTech executive that had been forwarded to James, discussing ensuring NextEra is properly positioned for acquisition months before any official acquisition talks had begun. When I finished, the silence in the room was deafening. Logan finally stood, his expression a mixture of shock and anger. "Is this verified?" he asked quietly. "Every byte," I confirmed. "Amanda and I have preserved all the original logs and communications on secure servers outside NextEra's network." Logan turned to the MedTech CEO. "Were you aware of these activities?" The man looked genuinely shocked. "Absolutely not. If these allegations are true, they were conducted without our corporate knowledge or approval." Troy finally broke. "You don't understand the market pressures. The original algorithm was too complex for practical implementation. We were streamlining it for actual use. By deliberately breaking it and lying about its capabilities," I challenged. "By secretly sending our proprietary data to a competitor? Who let a non-engineer deploy to production?" Logan asked, his voice dangerously quiet, as he stared at the commit logs still displayed on screen. "Troy doesn't even have engineering credentials. How did he get access to make these changes?" The room went completely silent. James attempted to regain control. "These are serious but unproven allegations that require proper investigation. For now, I suggest you leave the building." Logan interrupted, a cold fury in his voice I'd never heard before. "Both of you. Security will escort you out while we determine the full extent of what's happened here." As if on cue, NextEra's head of security appeared at the door with 2 officers. James and Troy were led out in stunned silence, their carefully constructed scheme collapsing around them. The MedTech CEO approached Logan. "We had no knowledge of these activities, but clearly we need to withdraw from these discussions immediately. If you pursue legal action, we'll fully cooperate with any investigation." As the room gradually emptied, with shocked employees breaking into intense discussions, Logan, Dr. Wilson, Amanda, and I gathered in a small conference room. "I should have listened to you sooner," Logan said, running a hand through his hair. "I was so focused on the funding round and growth targets that I missed what was happening right under my nose." "They were very careful," Dr. Wilson noted. "This was a sophisticated scheme that preyed on the natural tensions between technical innovation and business implementation." "What happens now?" Amanda asked. Logan looked at me. "First, we need to rebuild what they've damaged. I'd like you to take over as CTO. We need to restore the integrity of our technology and our team." "I'm honored," I said, genuinely surprised. But what about the Series C funding? After this chaos, I've already spoken with our lead investors, Dr. Wilson interjected. Once they understand what happened, I believe they'll be even more committed. In fact, this may increase our valuation once they see how valuable our technology truly is. She was right. In the days that followed, the full story emerged. James and Troy had been orchestrating a classic corporate sabotage for acquisition scheme. They had systematically undermined NextEra's technology, while positioning the company for a lowball acquisition by MedTech who, as it turned out, genuinely hadn't known about the unethical methods their executive had employed. James and Troy were immediately terminated, and Logan initiated legal proceedings for corporate espionage and fraud. MedTech conducted their own internal investigation, firing the executive who had been Troy's contact and cooperating fully with authorities. The Memorial Health System executives reached out, confirming they had been suspicious about the sudden strategy shift during our presentation. When we demonstrated the original, uncompromised algorithm for them, they immediately signed a partnership agreement. 6 months later, NextEra was a transformed company. Our Series C funding had closed at a valuation nearly double what James had been positioning for the acquisition. I led a restructured technical team with a renewed focus on our original mission, with Amanda as my deputy CTO. We implemented rigorous new security protocols and ethical guidelines, ensuring that financial pressures would never again compromise our commitment to saving lives. The hospital integration team successfully deployed our technology in 3 major health systems, with dozens more in the pipeline. One morning, I arrived at my office to find Logan waiting with a broad smile and a printout in his hand. "First official success story," he said, handing me the paper. Memorial Health just diagnosed stage 1 pancreatic cancer in a 54-year-old patient using our algorithm. Their oncologist says it would have gone undetected for at least another year with conventional screening. I stared at the report, emotion welling up. One life already saved by technology that would have been gutted if Troy and James had succeeded. How many more would follow? "This is why we fight," I said softly. "This is what makes it all worthwhile." Looking back on that tumultuous period, I realized how close we had come to losing everything, not just our company but our purpose. It would have been easier to walk away when things got difficult, to accept the corporate politics as inevitable, and find another job. But some things are worth fighting for, even when victory seems impossible. The 4 lines of code that exposed Troy and James's sabotage had become something of a legend at NextEra, framed on the wall of our main conference room as a reminder that technical integrity matters. But the real lesson went deeper. In a world increasingly driven by profit and expediency, standing up for what's right isn't just morally correct. It's essential to creating technology that truly serves humanity. Sometimes, justice comes in unexpected forms. Sometimes, it's a commit log that reveals the truth no one else wanted to see. And sometimes, having the courage to expose that truth changes everything. Have you ever stood up against wrongdoing in your workplace even when it seemed risky? Or have you witnessed someone else take a brave stand for what's right? Your experiences matter, and I'd love to hear your stories in the comments. If this story resonated with you, please like this video, subscribe to hear more true tales of corporate justice, and share with friends who might need inspiration to stand up for what's right. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember, sometimes the most powerful code you write is the truth.